Gary Talks, coming at you live from East Coast. I'm in Connecticut and in a house. I'm in my best friend and one of my partner's homes, Nate. Y'all might be familiar with Nate. If you've seen my Ann videos, that's what brings you here. And we're actually going to kind of talk about Nate and our relationship today for Tea and Tools. So I have a newsletter on Substack. If you want to subscribe, GariTalks.substack.com. I'll put it in the description below. And I do a segment once a month for the newsletter called Tea and Tools, where I share a story about some things, the tea, and then give y'all some tools about how to navigate the space. So today's tea, or the article, I'm gonna look over to the side because that's where my notes are. But the title of it is Boundaries Should Not Be Binding. Okay? Binding meaning, if you look up the etymology, meaning to be captive. Like, our boundaries are, I think we approach boundaries in a very fascinating way, right? We kind of use them as like barriers, blocks. Like, no, this is unacceptable for me, and so don't do that. But that's not what a boundary is, right? Like, a boundary, I think, speaks to how you're going to move based on your preferences, right? So it's a lot less to do with another person. It actually has very much to do with you. So first of all, the tea. So I'm a solo polyamorist. If any of y'all have been here from the start, you would have met me as a partnered polyamorist. So polyamory is the practice of having multiple partners committed, different levels of commitment, whatever you want, different levels of intimacy, whatever you want. It contrasts monogamy. Monogamy is what we are all pretty much taught, right? And you watch Disney movies, your parents probably like this, right? It says you and one other partner. Mono, meaning one. So one person is paired with another person, that's your primary partner, and usually that's going to be someone that you share your finances with, if you're at that level, or you're spending all your intimate time with this one person, right? So polyamory kind of expands that. We're talking about multiple partners. So having the way monogamy has one partner like that, you can have multiple partners like that. They can be on varying levels, right? You can be sharing finances with one person and not with another. You can just be sexual with one person. You could not be sexual at all with all your relationships. It's whatever the people in it decide. And it's very variable, so I can't even get into all the details of that. If y'all want to talk more about polyamory, that's a different conversation, specifically. The difference between partnered polyamory and solo polyamory is like partnered, or like, I guess when you're, I feel like I wouldn't call it partnered polyamory. That's just the word I'm using as kind of contrast. But partnered polyamory in my mind is like what you would have seen with me and Nate in the Ann video, which is that he and I were primary partners. So he was like, I mean, in simplest terms, my main boo. We were building a life together, and, you know, investing our resources into the relationship, investing our intimacy together, and then we were allowed to have other partners outside of the relationship. They didn't take as we weren't as committed to those other partners, right? Nate and I broke up, and not recently, within the year, we've reconnected, hence why I'm at his home. But now we are both solo polyamorous, in that after breaking up, we never made the decision to recommit at the level that we were at, right? So there was a commitment for us to build toward a particular thing: marriage, children, having a home together. Right now, because I'm living van life and living my best life, and he's out here living his best life. I mean, you see his apartment, it's gorgeous. And I mean, you only see a room of it, but it's pretty gorgeous. So we've found that we actually really prefer relating to each other freely, like two single people would. So when I think of solo polyamorous, and what could be useful for you to think about is like when people are dating, right? So like when you're dating around, before you meet the person that you find that you want to settle down with, you see multiple people, right? Like however many that you want. The difference is a lot of people view dating as like the precursor to committing to a solid relationship with somebody, right? Versus for me, I guess I'm living in the dating phase. I I mean, you can make whatever judgments you want to make about that. I really don't care. It works for me. I'm happy to be my full self by myself and be in relationships that work for what all parties are looking for. Yeah. Feels like the easiest way to describe that. So, in this, though, obviously, things come up, right? Being a polyamorous, I think whenever people think of polyamory, and my past experiences, if y'all have seen me on the end, if you've seen just my journey, I definitely was somebody who was practicing unhealthy, unsafe polyamory, and it was not a space where like emotional safety was centered. It was not a space where boundaries were respected, and I can say that for myself for sure. Sorry, I got interrupted there. So that brings us to the topic of the day, which is boundaries should not be binding. Okay, so a lot of the time when we are trying to navigate challenging spaces, especially in relation to polyamory, and like how do we maintain emotional safety and like sacredness in each relationship that we're in, right? And so a lot of the time we opt for rules over boundaries. And this is not only polyamory, I would say this is like across the board. A lot of rules, right? So rules, I think, dictate, they try to control another person's behavior. They try to tell them what to do. So if we use sex with condoms as an example, that's in the newsletter. A rule would be don't have sex without a condom, right? Point blank period, that's it. There's no there's no room around that. There's nothing, that's it. Just don't do that, okay? A boundary would be more so, when you have sex without a condom, I will not have sex with you until X, Y, and Z. If it's a really hard boundary, then it's a really hard boundary, and that's that on that. But for me, I find that like the title of it is boundaries should not be binding, because they should not be holding us captive in spaces, right? Because it feels like an ultimatum if that's the case. If that's truly how you feel that strongly about it, that's fine. And also recognize that it has an impact on your relationships, right? It has an impact on how the other person is going to move, how they feel. And also, we got to ask ourselves then, are we being honest about the desires that are present here? Because when a rule is broken, that shit is that hurts. And it rocks everything, right? Versus a boundary, again, it keeps people at choice. It keeps you at choice. It keeps the other person at choice. So they can choose to do what they do, and you get to choose what you do in response. Versus limiting the option for there even to be a choice. And then when that does happen, if it does happen, then it is a deep transgression. And I think rules can work, but I think a lot of the time we agree to rules, or they're put upon us without consent across all boards. Right? And so that's what creates tension. And so it's not easy. Like, it brings up a lot of emotions. And so, like, I guess the T for this is, like, Nate and I have been navigating the space of being solo polyamorists, sharing, space together and having conversations around what does it look like. So, like, this sex one has been a particular one. All right? Like, what do we want for our relationship, and what does that mean for outside relationships, right? So he and I, we want to be able to share in each other this way, right? Say unprotected sex. Say that's what we want to do with each other. The choices we make will then influence that, right? And what I love about a boundary is that it's just clear. It makes a lot of sense, right? You do this, and then I'm going to do this. And it's not like a threat. It's not like a promise. It's just like, I understand that if I want a particular space with this person, I have to take certain actions to cultivate this space. If I decide that my desires for something else are greater, then I can communicate that. And then that other space, like, I've now chosen this space, and then maybe not this space. And maybe we navigate through this one differently. It doesn't mean that it's closed entirely, but also things got to change, and I get to make a choice. I get to choose, like, do I still value this in the same way? Okay, yes, I do. Then, because I think whenever people think that you give people more room, they're going to wild out, and that's, to me, speaks a lot about people not living in their truth, right? Because why would you agree to something that you don't actually agree to? Codependent shit, I would say, right? Trying to be somebody that the other person needs, and not being what you really want. So that actually leads me to the first tip when it comes to setting boundaries, which is becoming aware of your needs and your capacity. Okay? So it's really important to know what it is that you desire, what you need, what you want in relationships with anybody, and for yourself, right? Like we have, we got physical needs, right? Food, water, shelter, air. I'd say sex is a need, but we could get into that. But we also have social emotional needs, right? And what is our capacity? You might hear me talk about capacity a lot. Capacity is simply like the ability to do, right? Your ability to hold space, your ability. If you're drained of capacity, you can't do shit. You can't be there for nobody. You can't be there for yourself. You need to find ways to replenish your capacity, right? If you have high capacity, if you're feeling energized like a battery and you're filled up, you have the capacity to do more, right? So it's very important to be understanding just your capacity in general, like not even in relation to other people, but if you are low capacity, you're going to have a lot less space and a lot less energy and time to be able to hold space for other people. So that would be the first step. And I've offered tips on this in the past, and I'll offer them again. Ask yourself 2 questions at the end of the day. What built me up today? What built my capacity? What drained me today? What killed my capacity, right? And if you're aware of those things, sometimes they help in boundaries, sometimes they don't, right? So if you know, for instance, that working for 8 hours drains your capacity, then you know how to move when you're approaching 8 hours of work. You will not step past 8. You will not do 9. Because you know your limits. You get what I'm saying? That's important. So becoming aware of your capacity. 2, acknowledge what you gain in setting the boundary, right? So when you set a boundary, what do you want, right? What is the point of this? What is the purpose of this? What is this going to bring you more of? What is it going to ensure, right? What is the purpose? Because so for instance, if we go back to the sex one, the rule of don't have sex without a condom. What do I gain? I gain you not having sex without a condom, for sure. So I gain, I guess, the certainty of, as long as you don't break the rule, I gain the certainty that you won't be doing that, right? Versus when I think about the boundary of, I won't have sex. You can have sex without a condom. I won't have sex with you if that's what you so choose. What I get to walk away with is agency over my body. I get to be in respect and trust myself that I said I was going to do something and did something. And the other person also gets to see that too, which is that you moved in that way and then this is how I responded to that. That's it. And it's funny how that builds integrity within the self and with other people because they know that you're being dead ass, right? I'm not joking around. It's not like, and it's really not about you, like the other person. Yeah, you did something and now I'm doing something else, but it's mostly about me and what I was comfortable with, right? What I wanted, what I wanted was a particular thing, and this ensures that I get to leave intact, right? So it's not like I'm still... If I cross and I'm clear that I'm crossing my own boundary when I act outside of what I just said. If you're tracking with what I'm saying. And then the last thing that I had is boundaries describe how you move, right? It kind of ties with the other one. It doesn't have to do with the other person. The example that I use, if we're going to use a non-sexual example, if I don't want to be called on Sundays, I tell you, don't call me on Sundays. That's a preference. That's not a boundary. Right? Don't call me on Sundays is not a boundary. That would be more of a rule, and it's a preference. If you call me on Sunday and I don't pick up, I have now enforced my boundary. That's a boundary. It's about how you move. It's not about how that other person moves. If someone else does that, they have shown you. And it's not even like who they are, so fuck them. No, but like they've shown you that they find your word pushable, right? They've shown you that maybe they didn't hear you, or maybe they really need you, or whatever the fuck they showed you. That's on them. You can decide what you want to do with that, right? If you say that and they keep doing that over and over, it's showing you that somebody's pushing against your boundary and not respecting what you have to say. But ultimately, the boundary is you not answering the phone. The boundary comes from you not explaining yourself again and just being like, bruh, I said this like 7 times and you keep calling me on Sundays. I'm gonna need, no. And then you can have a closing conversation, right? I just feel like our conversation around boundaries has been skewed. It's been so much more about other people and what they need to do for us to be safe versus what are we doing to ensure our safety and keeping ourselves and others at choice. Because you should be allowed to choose. If you want to show me who you are, show me. And then I'm going to go this way. Not don't show me, just try to coddle my sense of safety. I don't agree with that at all. And so this is like, I was gonna try, I don't know, it's been challenging to kind of talk about this, but this is what I got for y'all, and I'm not gonna re-edit it. So enjoy this as it is. If y'all got questions, hit me up, read the newsletter, and that's what I got.